Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. I just got done watching Creed 2 the other day. It made me start reminiscing, especially since I binged all the Rocky movies in anticipation for Creed 2. It made me feel like I had an obligation to rank them and share it for you guys. Now, of course, my list is going to be my own personal opinion. It will definitely not match your list. And I actually encourage you to tell me your list down below. And if you have a problem with my list, go ahead and tell me in an educated way why you disagree with me. If you're going to comment back and say I'm an idiot and Rocky 5 is a masterpiece, I'll probably just comment back a link to your nearest psychiatrist. The things I was looking at to formulate my list and look at what was the best Rocky movies made, I was looking at a couple of things. One, how important the story was to the franchise, how it developed the characters, how it brought Rocky along his path. Of course, the opponent he faces in that movie, a training montage, of course, because I love me a good training montage. Reminds me of why I need to put the donuts down. And overall, the ones that'll be remembered as a classic and not really a great action movie. And last thing I'll say before jumping into this list, man, I just have to thank my dad, because he did the right thing as a father and sat me down when I was a kid and showed me these Rocky movies. I think that's just one of the mandatory things you have to do when you're a dad. You teach your son how to ride a bike, you teach him how to shave, and you sit him down and you show him Rocky movies. If you don't do that, your father basically failed. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start from the bottom of the list, the worst movie in the franchise. No question about it, Rocky 5.
Piece of garbage, you know that?
No! That's it! You told him I'd fight anywhere, anytime. In the ring. Tommy Gunn only fights in the ring.
My ring's outside.
Yeah? Let's do it. Come on, Tommy, knock me out!
Now, it's unanimous with all Rocky fans out there that Rocky 5 is just the one we don't talk about. He's that family member no one mentions, he's there in the corner, he's at Thanksgiving dinner, but we'd like to wish he wasn't there. But playing devil's advocate for a second, I understand what they were trying to do with Rocky 5. There's only so many times you can have Rocky do a training montage, give a speech, tell a lecture, give some great quotes, and then fight the bad guy and either win or lose. The fact what they were trying to go for here was Rocky's facing being poor, the life of an athlete no one talks about, the family drama, and the stuff involving his son and Adrian were the redeeming parts of this movie, especially that scene involving Mickey. But everything else just fell flat. It just didn't seem to fit right, and this movie just leaves you with a bad taste. And I know a Rocky movie doesn't need him always boxing in the ring, but it was just sorely missed by the end of this movie with that street fight. Just ridiculous. And a couple little fun facts about this film that I was reading upon before starting this list is Sylvester Stallone originally planned to have Rocky die at the end of this movie, so it could have actually been a lot worse and prevented us from having some great movies later on. Next on the list, we're gonna jump to number 7, and that for me is Rocky 2.
This fight is gonna be a war.
You're going down, man. You're going down.
The most electrifying rematch in motion picture history. Rocky 2.
Now, I have to say before going into this, every movie from here on out, amazing, spectacular, AA+. So just because it's second to last does not mean this film is horrible to me. It does not mean that I hate it. It just means that there are other films that are just kind of better than this one. And I can understand that some other people will actually have Rocky 2 a lot higher on the list, but just in terms of memorability and what it did for the franchise, there are points where you think to yourself, I think I can skip this one. I understand what it's about, and it's just the redemption story of turning Rocky into the champion. But of course, some of the best character development and the things that really made Rocky, I love how he's struggling, that he doesn't want to be a boxer. He didn't want to be a fighter. He was trying to get an office job. He was trying to do commercials. He couldn't read, but he lives his dream of marrying Adrian, getting a place to stay. But even with all that happy life, he always has to go back to boxing. And I just think that's an interesting story. It added layers of depth that boxing is sort of stuck to Rocky, and it's something he will never be able to escape because that's all he knows. For me, this is the soap opera one, the catching up with the characters, the developing them for future movies. It's not really the fight scenes or the battle between them that is memorable to me. It's more what happened in this movie that set them up for the later movies. Number 6 on my list, I'm gonna go with Rocky 4.
I must break you.
And I know this is going to sound a little contradictory, especially since I'm ranking these movies from worst to best, but this one is kind of my personal favorite. But even though it is my personal favorite, it's the one I can always put on just over and over and not really get tired of this movie. It's not a great movie. It's a real guilty pleasure for me, and I understand people if this is sort of like Rocky 5 for them. I just had such a nostalgic memory of this movie, and then when I popped it in a week ago to watch it in preparation for Creed 2, it wasn't as glorious as I remembered. I had no idea how they incorporated the songs into this movie. Now, this record I actually own on vinyl, and I should have probably brought it, but it's downstairs and I'm a little lazy. Like I said, gotta put those donuts down, man. Burning Heart, Sweet Victory, No Easy Way Out, all these songs just pump me up and have me excited to go see this movie again. But when you watch how they play them out in this movie, it really feels like a music video, and I almost feel like they didn't pay for the music to be in the movie. The music people paid for it to be in Rocky, and that's how they got their budget for this film. Aside from that though, it's also the most simple story out of all the Rocky movies. Basically, Dolph Lundgren's character Ivan Drago kills Apollo, Rocky wants revenge, he fights Ivan, he beats him, and he ends the Cold War. There's not even really subplots to the film, there's no underlying layers, it's just as basic of a film as it gets, and I think that's why this makes a great action movie, but not really something that you'll remember be considered a classic. Number 5 on my list, I'm gonna go with Creed 2. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come out of this movie and absolutely love it, and I agree with you because I loved it too. And because it's fresh in your mind, it's something brand new, and you just got all these emotions after just watching the movie, you're going to want this film a little higher on the list. And I completely understand that, and I don't blame you for doing that, but for me, I recognize some of these problems that don't really make it as great as some of these other movies. But I tell you, I was completely surprised because I thought this was going to be another Rocky 5 situation, because this could have been completely disastrous, especially with Ryan Coogler not coming back and how amazing he made Creed to be. But this new director, Stephen Cable Jr., knocks it out of the freaking park, man. He handles the story of Dolph Lundgren and his son, Victor Drago, so amazingly. He makes me care about Adonis Creed just a little more than I did in the first film, because gotta be honest with you, sometimes he's an asshole and kinda hard to sympathize with. But then again, so was his father, and Apollo Creed is just the man. The interactions he has with Rocky in this movie, and what they do with this character, how they give him a nice little send-off right when he's tapping him, telling him, it's your time, kid. And then we get his little hat, which I bet some of you out there can put a list of Rocky and his hats, because the man likes to wear a lot of hats. Not just that, but with him sending him off to Vancouver to be with his son and spend the remaining years he has left with them. Beautiful, man. I don't want to see Rocky die. I don't want to see him on his deathbed. I don't want to visit his grave and his funeral. I just want to imagine that this character lived forever. He's happy with his family. And this movie just really accomplished that. So good job on it. I just think there were some better ones in this franchise. Number 4 on my list, Rocky 3.
How can you kill me getting mad? Dead meat.
Now, the reason I have Rocky above Creed is because I think this is the perfect blend of the drama with an action movie. I don't think any other film in this series captures that well. Because you either have your Rocky 4, where it's a straight up action movie, or you have your first Rocky, where it's a drama and can be nominated for an Oscar. Rocky 3 to me is the perfect mixture of those two things. It has the drama, it has the emotional punches, it has the character development you need. At the same time, you also have a memorable opponent, Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T, great fight sequences, another amazing training montages, guys, training montages for life. And this was also the film where Adrian finally broke out of her shell, had a great monologue, gave Rocky a speech instead of Rocky always giving us the speech. Really just all around a great movie, and I think it's just that perfect harmony of drama meets action. Moving on from that, number 3 on my list, Rocky Balboa.
Nothing over till it's over.
Where's that from? The 80s?
It's probably in the 70s.
Now, even I was a kid. I think it was around, I was 11 years old when Rocky Balboa came out, and even then, I remember the news, movie sites, everything criticizing that old fart was gonna be Rocky again. I think a lot of people were expecting this movie to fail and wonder why would you do this again, especially with your last two movies being critically panned. But this takes an approach of focusing on the drama, the character development, and what made Rocky great to watch, leaving us with some of the best lectures and speeches he's done in all the other movies. That scene where he's talking to his son outside the restaurant, I play that back whenever I'm feeling down. I think if the series ended here, we all would have been perfectly fine with that, but we're happy they kept on churning. Now the next two on my list can be pretty obvious to point out, but hey, I'm still gonna mention them anyways. Number 2, Creed.
A great fighter once said, "It ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward."
Now, Creed was a knockout success. I wasn't really doubting the film. I thought the idea of having Apollo Creed's son come and be the new face, get Rocky to train him, and then play a movie along that end, I thought that was perfectly fine. I don't see why a lot of people had trouble with that. But the fact that this was the 7th film in, and Sylvester Stallone was nominated for an Academy Award because of his performance in this movie, it tells you the heights of how good this franchise is. But the fact that they can parallel Creed's story to the first Rocky movie, make it work, make it its own, bring it in modern times, and still have a boxing movie that kicks ass, you just gotta give it up for Creed, man. And last on my list, number 1, which should just always be the classic, the original, Rocky.
His whole life was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot. His name is Sylvester Stallone, but you will always remember him as Rocky.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, I went ahead and binged the Rocky series in preparation for Creed 2, and even though this movie came out in 1976 when my father was only 1 year old, it still held up. It still made me feel emotional. It still made me heavily relate to the character of Rocky, his underdog story, that final scene when he doesn't win, but he cries out for Adrian, and the music, the score, all that blended together gives me goosebumps and almost makes me want to shed a tear, a manly tear. The fact that you can have characters like Paulie that are so freaking horrible and astonishing to watch, but still be interested in them, still be invested in them. Characters like Adrian, who you think at first is like, why the hell are you interested in this girl? Have a trainer who could care less about his opponent, but just really being on top and carrying a man to success, and just having that all wrap out at the end. And me watching it 40 years later and still loving it. Every second of it, every bit of dialogue, witnessing the character of Rocky, something that I don't think we get a lot nowadays, memorable characters. It's an everlasting classic to me. I'll always have it in high hopes, and man, I got it in my shelf for whenever I have a kid, and as soon as he turns 11, it's Rocky time. But anyways, guys, that's just really my list of ranking these movies. Let me know your list down below, guys. If you have anything to debate or discuss with me, why I picked a certain film, where it was, go ahead and comment down below. I'll also be replying to you. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at 3C Film Review. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.